Hey guys, what's up? Star Wars Rebels just ended. After 5 years of this shit, it's finally over. Thank God! This is gonna be an entire video of me just talking about Rebels because I figure after enduring 5 years of this crap, it's worth talking about now that we're finally at the end of it. So, to people that thoroughly enjoyed Rebels all throughout its entire run, this is not for you. For people that are excited for my upcoming Infinity War figures, I'm working on Iron Spider and I'm almost done with the webbing on his head, but this is also not for you. So, what did I think of the Star Wars Rebels Season 4 series finale? Look, man, allow me to just preface all of this with, I would say, the last few episodes, beginning with the first part of the, and also full spoilers, by the way. I figured that was a given at this point. The first episode, the episodes went Jedi Knight and then Doom or something. Basically, the two episodes that featured, of course, the story arc with Kanan's death. From that point, all the way up until the series finale, I would say Rebels finally reached the quality of storytelling that I was expecting from day -1, because they just came off of the Clone Wars. This was the same animation team that designed and created and built the Clone Wars, the series that changed my life and opened up my mind to creativity, as deep and as ridiculous as that sounds. And so when Disney bought Lucasfilm and we got to Rebels and it was announced and they were really pushing, they were going to design it based off of Ralph McQuarrie concept art. This was going to be so great. And I was pretty excited, man. I remember doing a video all the way back then in 2013 and I was like, hey, this is going to be awesome. Maybe we'll see Starkiller or, Ahsoka, and it's okay. The Clone Wars is canceled, but they're going to continue it just with a time jump. So it should be fine. And, Disney, they had different ideas. And they say that Star Wars Rebels was in development long before the Disney acquisition happened, the Disney takeover. But it's like, I don't know, man. It's just difficult for me to believe that Dave Filoni and crew would jump from what they were doing with the Clone Wars and how fantastic that series was to then, a year later, launching a series that is so much more limited with its storytelling, with its quality, with its animation, with its characters. It's just difficult for me to believe. And so 2014 comes. Series is coming out. I think it was Celebration 2014, wherever the hell that was. And we see the first photo of the first character, the Inquisitor, in front of some stormtroopers. I was like, this is looking good. That looks awesome. And then more videos started coming out after the Ghost leaked, like the actual Ghost Lego set was coming out that year in the fall, obviously, for the series. And so that's how we all learned of these characters' names. And so through leaks, we learned Ezra, Zeb, Kanan, and I was like, okay, the names are a little weird, but it's not too bad. And then they started revealing the characters, and then we saw Kanan, the cowboy Jedi, and I was like, okay. And then Ezra Bridger, Aladdin, I was like, oh, here we go. And then I saw Sabine, I was like, yep, this is what they're doing. Okay. And sure enough, for the years that would follow, Rebels was everything I did not want it to be. It was a Disney XD garbage series that was just so desperately trying to recreate the magic of the original trilogy as if it's something to be recreated. And you had all these characters that for the longest time were such knockoffs of the original trilogy in so many different ways. I mean, Zeb was literally based off of concept art of Chewbacca. I mean, Kanan taking up the Jedi Master role, just like Obi-Wan to young Luke in A New Hope. You had Hera, who was practically Leia. Chopper was R2. It was too much. The similarities were too close. They since deviated from a lot of those similarities, and I would say over the course of the series, Kanan and Hera really detached from all that for me. I really came to love Kanan and Hera because I thought that Kanan being the Jedi, the apprentice of Depa Billaba, Mace Windu's apprentice, and surviving Order 66, that entire story, and then especially the book A New Dawn with him and Hera, I really grew to love them as characters. I think Kanan and Hera are two excellent characters, and the series really should have focused on them. And hey, I think that Ezra and Sabine were great as concepts. I mean, Ezra, this kid on this planet, hard locked by the Empire, like just deep in occupation from the Empire, and is found by this Order 66 surviving Jedi, all these years after, 15 years after Revenge of the Sith, and I thought that was pretty cool, and that it would have been great, but then they brought on Taylor Gray to voice him, and then they designed the character model to look like Aladdin for the first 3 seasons. I guess I shouldn't say 3 seasons. The first 2.5 seasons, or was it just... When did Ezra debut his new look? It might have been... I think it might have been the premiere episode of season 3. I don't even remember. But yeah, 2 seasons of him looking like Aladdin, like he was ready to hop on a magic carpet and fly away. That's pretty much what Ezra was for the first 2 seasons. He was Space Aladdin with a lightsaber. And it was so unbearably cringy most of the way through, and it was pretty bad, man. And Sabine, also really great as a concept. An artistic Mandalorian, and part of the new generation of Mandalorians that has grown up in a world after Revenge of the Sith, after the Mandalorian Civil War, and she's incredibly artistic and realizes that she's in a position to lead the Mandalorians into a better future. Sounds awesome. Really great idea. And then they cast, what's her name? Tia Scar? And then they design her character model to be so odd looking that it's just distracting. Even in these last 2 episodes, I'm like, Ezra and Sabine are finally okay characters that are not bothering me, that are not distracting from the story, that are not pulling me out of scenes. And then it's just like their character models are so bad. I cannot help but focus on Ezra's nose, on Sabine's eyes that are so big, they look like they're going to blow up and explode from her skull. And it's just so aggravating, man. Because like I said, they were really great characters in concept, but I just really think execution-wise, Taylor Gray, Tia Scar, I'm sure they're great people, but they did not belong in these roles. That's just my opinion. That is just my opinion. You may not agree. So, yeah, but out of that came, Disney had their mascots. They had Ezra Bridger. They had Sabine Wren, 2 characters that they would basically, for the last few years parade around to be the, kind of like the entry point characters to a younger generation, the younger teenage. It's so aggravating to me that Disney felt the need to create characters like that for this series, or I mean, I don't know what happened in the creative process that led to them becoming the way they did, Ezra and Sabine, but those characters, man, for the entirety of the series, all the way up until these last few episodes before they were finally tolerable, it was like, God, how does this feel okay to them? And you could tell, I mean, there was quite a shakeup at Lucasfilm when this all started. I mean, I don't even know how many people working on the Clone Wars left and how many of them were replaced. I never really there was never really any clear answers as to who was who at the Lucasfilm animation division, and how many people from the Clone Wars were actually working on this. So, yeah, and I mean, then of course came along things like Ahsoka, the Inquisitors and Maul and Saw Gerrera, and it was cool, man. I mean, we got to go to Mustafar, and we found out Luminar was executed by the Inquisitor. I thought the Inquisitor's helicopter lightsabers were the most ridiculous thing ever created in Star Wars canon. They were literally helicopter lightsabers. Everybody got a good laugh out of that. But I really didn't agree with everybody when it came to the entire Obi-Wan and Maul confrontation. I think that should have been saved for an Obi-Wan solo movie. And now because they butchered it so terribly bad in Rebels, I don't think that there's any potential for an Obi-Wan solo movie at this point, because every major event of his life has now been covered. And hey, I realize that there are probably going to be plenty of people jumping down in the comments to probably try to explain to me how it was like a samurai fight. It was about how it was about the emotions driving each character, and et cetera, et cetera. But I'm sorry, Obi-Wan would not have been the only one honing his skills and abilities for 2 decades that would follow Revenge of the Sith. I think Maul would have been a bit more prepared, and he would have been a bit more calculating and prepared to face Obi-Wan yet again, like he already was in the Clone Wars after having spent 10 years as a spider creature. I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole Obi-Wan and Maul confrontation debate. I thought that it was terrible. I wasn't expecting a full flashy fight like this was Episode 3, but I was expecting something a bit more meaningful that didn't have Ezra and Chopper take over 2/3 of the episode, especially for somebody like Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi, 2 iconic characters of pop culture throughout the world. And then the Ahsoka Vader confrontation. I really appreciated that they did that. I never thought we'd get that far. I always thought Ahsoka was going to be gone by the end of the Clone Wars, and that would explain why Anakin and Obi-Wan never even speak her name. That, like, I figured something horrible would have happened to Ahsoka, like she would have died, and Anakin just would never even want to speak of it. But nope, she survived well on past into the Galactic Civil War, and now the sequel era. And their whole confrontation on Malachor is pretty insane. I mean, it was pretty cool, but having Ezra in there to throw in god-awful dialogue to just pull me out of the scene, I need a little more training, just ruined it for me in so many ways. And not entirely. It was still a really great sequence, especially when you get to see Anakin through the face mask, through Vader's mask, and then having the Ahsoka theme play over it. And then, of course, being left in the dark again, not knowing what happened to her for the 2 more years that would follow, but good God, man, it all just felt very, very odd to have all these major events happening in and around the, like right up, leading up to the original trilogy, because because then, of course, we get to Saw Gerrera and Rogue One, and they start foreshadowing Rogue One. We start to see Mon Mothma and everything, and I think that's such a shame that because this is another thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier on in this video. But Star Wars Rebels was limiting from day one because they were already from the very start going into this with the idea of we are going to create a series that is going to focus on one group, one rebel cell, when we have the entire galaxy to explore in the original trilogy era for the first time. We didn't have that in the actual original trilogy. The galaxy and the universe had not been fully constructed by George Lucas. And now with Rebels, we are there. So, of course, they did go to Geonosis. They went to Mustafar. They went to a few worlds. But it was so hardcore, dead set focused on this one rebel cell and this one damn planet, Lothal. God, I slowly started to hate Lothal. But the Clone Wars focused on the entire galaxy. We got to it didn't always rely on Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka to actually help the audience and show the audience the actual scale and scope of the Clone Wars and the effect it had on the galaxy for the 3 years that would precede Revenge of the Sith. We got to follow every other Jedi that you never would have expected to spend time with, every other side character and bounty hunter, seeing the war and the galaxy from all these different perspectives. It was exactly what you would hope for from a series like the Clone Wars, and for a lot of it, that's what made the Clone Wars so great. We weren't just following Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, but we were also following those on the other side. We got to see the Separatists, we got to see the bounty hunters, we got to spend so much time with the clones, and everybody, including myself, grew to love the clones, and that's why I built my entire YouTube channel and my entire YouTube career. And that's why everything I've done leading up to today was founded on that, just spending so much time with the clones and how they were developed, and then you get to Rebels and we're just so limited. We're just so, it's such a shame, man, because how great would it have been if, instead of being so hard locked and focused on just them, we could have spent a good portion of the series with Leia and Bail Organa as they build and construct the rebellion from the ground up. How cool would it have been to see Saw Gerrera and spend more time with the partisans? It would have been so awesome to spend more time with Vader and the Imperial side of things, and basically do what the Clone Wars did, just now in an era that would precede the original trilogy instead of Revenge of the Sith. But no, instead they decided, the story group decided they would focus all their attention and energy on just one group of characters and tell a story that was so self-contained that they were literally out of content for so much of the series. And they'll say, no. See, the core of the Hammerheads showed up in Rogue One. The Space Whales showed up at the end of the series. That was not all filler. Okay. You cherry-picked a few elements from your filler episodes, and they did end up amounting to something insignificant. Congratulations. That doesn't account for almost the entirety of Season 2 being garbage. I don't agree with how they approached this series. I don't agree with how they executed the creation of the characters. I don't agree with the animation style. I thought so many of the character models were atrocious. And listen, I'm not the biggest... the Clone Wars changed my life, right? Creatively and pretty much as a person. But the Clone Wars was not without its flaws. I mean, the story arc with Commando Gregor was god-awful, which is why I was not excited to see him back in Rebels. That was probably the worst story arc of the Clone Wars. Character models like Count Dooku, terrible. Palpatine, mostly terrible. Padme looked like a Jimmy Neutron character. I mean, the list could go on. The Clone Wars had plenty of its flaws, too. But it's just such a shame that the animation crew did not, instead of actually, making an effort to focus on that and not make Bail Organa look like Handy Manny all grown up and to, not make all these characters look so god-awful, I think is a shame. I think it's a shame. And so there's plenty more that I could discuss about Rebels, but getting to the final episodes here, I personally loved Kanan's death sequence. I thought that scene was the best of the entire series. I thought it was really well crafted. I think it would have been a lot more meaningful if it was Thrawn inside the Walker, because they brought Thrawn back into canon and he's been ever so present for the last couple of years doing nothing outside of the novels. I didn't even finish reading the Thrawn novel. I got so bored. I mean, it's fine, but it's just, I think it's pretty sad that we had Rebels introduce Thrawn, and Thrawn was back in canon, and instead of strategically tipping Star Destroyers and on their side to have a tactical advantage against the enemy fleet and doing everything that we know Thrawn to do, they're just like, here he is, and we'll just have him spout off crap about art for the entirety of all of his sequences and all of his scenes, and he's so scary and so intimidating because he commanded one fleet once for the Season 3 finale, and he caught one traitor, and oh boy, Thrawn inspected some speeder bikes and blew a guy up. He's supposed to be horrifying. This is the Thrawn you all knew. No, it was what we got was an empty, very shallow version of Thrawn compared to what he did and what he was capable of in his original incarnation. So I think that was a shame, and I think it would have been a lot more meaningful if he was actually in the Walker and did something. But no, they gave that to Governor Pryce, a character nobody cared about, who took up a pretty substantial amount of time in the Thrawn novel as well. So they obviously made Timothy Zahn incorporate her into that book, which I think was also a shame. But no, I personally loved that. I loved Kanan's death sequence. I thought that was incredible. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, I thought if we couldn't have Ezra and Kanan be the reason Vader showed up so late to the Battle of Scarif, I think this was the second best thing. Because I mean, personally, I think it would have. Okay, they don't want to do the Battle of Scarif because we know that they win. That's fine. But I think it would have been amazing if Kanan and Ezra were the reason that Vader arrived so late to the Battle of Scarif. It would have been so awesome if they were holding him off and they both died just trying to stop him. Because realistically, that's how it would have gone down. Realistically, unless directly given the... And this is the only reason I think that Vader lost interest in Kanan and Ezra and just allowed them to survive even after the Inquisitors were all killed. Because I'm pretty sure the Emperor must have given Vader the orders to let them be for now to see what they would do. But I still think that would have been an incredible ending, especially if they maybe even used Michael Giacchino's score from the ending of Rogue One, just having the two of them fight Vader and be cut down or sacrifice themselves in some major explosion to hopefully slow him down. But no, so again, I think what we got with Kanan was the next best thing. I thought that it was a really well crafted scene. I love the score from Kevin Kiner. Always been an incredible An incredible composer. That guy is amazing. I mean, right behind, I would say, Michael Giacchino for Star Wars soundtracks. He's right there. He did an incredible job throughout all the Clone Wars. And then, and I loved how Kanan regained his sight, and everything about that scene was so satisfying. I loved it, and that's why I recreated it in Lego. I did a quick little edit of it. And then came the World Between Worlds, or World Between Worlds episode, where, oh man, we introduced time travel into Star Wars. So I guess this is a thing that Dave Filoni had planned since Star Wars Celebration Orlando when I was there with all my friends, because he had talked about this on Rebels Recon or whatever, that all this stuff had been in the pipeline for a long time. That's how it works. They had these stories all done, probably over a year ago at this point, which I think is even more sad, because the fact that they went all season 1, 2, and most of 3, and partially into 4, and they actually have these stories developed a year in advance, and most of the episodes were still that bad. There's just nothing good about this, man. About how this was done, if you ask me, because it was so much more focused on kids throughout the entirety of the series. It's pretty much almost indisputable at this point. So, regardless, introducing time travel into Star Wars canon was, I had a friend spoil some of it for me, and I said, lay it on me. I want to know what happens, because I don't really care when it comes to Rebels. And so when I found out that time travel was going to be introduced via Ezra, I was like, oh boy, this is what they're going to do. Instead of having the balls to kill Ezra, they're going to make him become God himself. He's going to become the embodiment of the cosmic force or some shit. But no, he ended up opening a portal via the Jedi Temple on Lothal, where apparently there was a portal left there by the Mortis gods, the Ones. And Mortis was one of my favorite, arcs in the Clone Wars. I thought it was incredible, amazing. And so I really appreciated all the tie-ins to Mortis, even if they were very indirect, and Ezra never actually went to Mortis or anything like that. But actually entering that realm and hearing all of the voices from so many Star Wars characters, of course the big A-listers, like you heard Anakin in there, Hayden Christensen once, the line from Matt Lanter in the first Clone Wars movie when he's first speaking to Ahsoka, Rey, Kylo Ren, Poe Dameron, Maz Kanata, and the list just goes on. Obi-Wan, Yoda. Just amazing. I loved that. And it was really cool because, I'm also trying to justify how he would be hearing all these voices from these very specific people. But then again, I think, in terms of in terms of the time period, it kind of makes sense because these are the people in the last, the last 2 decades and into the future few decades. So it makes sense that he's not hearing Darth Bane or any of these other voices from the past, from thousands of years ago. It makes more sense that he's hearing voices from those that changed the galaxy within his time period. So I think that was really awesome. But then when we got to the point where Morai, the daughter, now of course embodied into the freaking bird. Ahsoka's not a bird, confirmed, thank God. And opens the portal, and we finally see what happens to Ahsoka and how she nearly dies and gets cut down by Anakin. And man, they really showed Vader's brutality in that scene. He was trying to kill her. Such a shame that Anakin suffered such a hardcore form of disassociation with his past, that he would just try to brutally murder Ahsoka in that way. I thought that was so sad, and it hit me so hard for somebody like me who grew up with the Clone Wars. But I love that. And then having Ezra reach in and pull her through time, I was like, whoa. We were all like, whoa. Because there she was. He pulled her through time from 2 years ago, and there was Ahsoka on the ground, suddenly with him, and it was so sudden and abrupt. I was like, okay. And then she wakes up, Ezra, and I was like, I feel it physically every time I hear a beloved character like Ahsoka say Ezra. But also, one thing I didn't mention in this video, how they brought back Captain Rex. That was awesome. But Captain Rex's character models and the clones' character models looked a little off, and they totally ruined Wolf as a character when they first introduced him and made him go against everything he believed in. But I'm really glad they reintroduced Rex, and so that was totally random. Sorry. But going back to the time travel thing, I thought that was really awesome. And then you know they're both experiencing this realm together, and then they eventually encounter Palpatine, who tries to tempt Ezra by opening up one of the portals, and it's like an illusion, you know, of Kanan's death. And I thought that was really cool. Of course, Ezra resisting the temptation, and that was all great. But then when Palpatine nearly came through, I mean, he stuck a hand through the portal, and then Ahsoka and Ezra faced him off, and that was insane. And it was really cool how they brought Ian McDiarmid on to finally voice Palpatine. I think it's a shame that he never came on to voice Palpatine in the Clone Wars, but I'm glad that he did ultimately come back for this at the very least. But man, Ahsoka facing off every Inquisitor that the Empire had left, Maul, Vader, I mean Anakin, and then Palpatine, you know, traveling through time and then facing Palpatine himself, all within 1 hour. Man, not only is she lucky to survive, but that's some crazy shit. She fought every dark side icon, every dark side user, you know, of her generation, of her time, in an hour. I mean, good God, the circumstances line up as to how she survived. But at the same time, I also understand a lot of people that really feel kind of aggravated that time travel was introduced and invented practically to save Ahsoka. You know, because it was already a stretch that Ahsoka lived beyond the Clone Wars. But then to have her survive yet again through via the first known use of time travel, you start to wonder, because Dave Filoni had a cut of the Rebels scene, I'm sure a bunch of you know, where Ahsoka is killed by Anakin, but then he changed it basically because of fan perception, and I think it's great to not abide by what fans expect from the story, but at the same time to then kind of contradict yourself and do exactly that and introduce time travel to save a beloved character. I think you wonder if he's kind of holding on to Ahsoka, and I think it's safe to say he is. I know if I was in Dave's position, I would. He created an incredible character within Ahsoka. She's my third favorite Star Wars character of all time. I mean, I love Ahsoka. I grew up with the character practically throughout my teens, and so I mean, I don't want to see her die either. But at the same time, now we made it all the way to these final episodes, and I mean, of course, Kanan was the only one to die. The finale was lackluster. It was just one final assault on Lothal. Whoop-de-frickin-do. I didn't care. It was all done really well, though. It was all fine. I got really aggravated by characters like Price and Rook being stereotypical villains. But finally having Thrawn return and everything with Palpatine, and I really thought it was cool how Palpatine, you know, showed Ezra what he was like. You know, I really appreciated actually seeing how Palpatine presents himself via hologram to the galaxy, and probably to other Imperial officials, and you know, probably through public messages. So I thought that was really cool, and I really liked how they designed Palpatine for that sequence. And Ian McDiarmid, of course, incredible the entire time, and the whole sequence, of course, like giving Ezra the opportunity to enter a reality where his parents are alive. I was like, of course I knew he wouldn't do it, but I was hoping he would, just to get the hell out of the universe and go away. But I thought that was a really cool scene. I didn't care about his parents, never did, couldn't care less. But then the Imperial guards that Palpatine had enter the room after that was really cool, and I like how the hologram transitioned from Palpatine to Sidious like that. That was awesome. Been listening to Plagueis, the non-canon Legends book about Plagueis and Palpatine. Incredible book, and just, you know, of course, that helped, because of course, you know, I'm watching this scene with Palpatine, new content with Palpatine, and you know, I've been pretty invested in Palpatine's character, you know, recently. But then we get to the end of the series, man, and Gregor dies, thank God. One of my least favorite clones. I love the Clone Wars and the clones, and I won't say it again, but good God, man, never really cared for Gregor. Just because he was a commando that never meant that I cared. Even back in like 2012 when he was introduced, I mean, his armor was cool. Other than that, it was a very odd story, and so I didn't care when he died. And it never made sense how he met up with Rex and Wolf after Order 66 went down. So then, when we get to the series conclusion and Ezra surrenders to Thrawn and brings in the space whales. It's like, oh boy, here we go. And I definitely, I like how it is a good, hard, clear explanation. Sorry for the hard cut there. Why Ezra and Thrawn were not around for the original trilogy. And it could also make sense, with what Ezra did, forcing the Star Destroyer into hyperspace with the space whales in tow. Made sense, because, that could also explain how Thrawn got out into the unknown regions and helped the First Order navigate the unknown regions, which, of course, he's mostly familiar with, and that's where he came from. But I knew they wouldn't kill Ezra. Listen, from day one, I knew they wouldn't kill Ezra. They were propping him up to be this Disney mascot, this space Aladdin, this kid-friendly character who could not be touched. I knew that's what would happen. Of course, totally predictable. I was hoping that they would have done what was best for the story and killed off Ezra, because you get to Return of the Jedi, and Yoda very specifically and very clearly says, the last of the Jedi will you be, to Luke. And now, the last of the Jedi, Luke was not. Because Dave Filoni on Rebels Recon, very unenthusiastically, because he seems so relieved and done with the series at this point, confirmed that they both survived. Ezra and Thrawn both survived that hyperspace jump. So it leaves me wondering, because then, you cut to this really awkward silence after it happens. And it's like, okay, we freed Lothal, blow up the dome, oh boy. Price dies. All right, Lothal's free, and hard cut to Sabine monologue, end of the series. I was like, jeez, man. So I thought that was kind of an odd transition. It was just like, celebration. Okay, hard cut Sabine monologue. It was kind of odd and jarring a bit. And so that comes, and we're listening to Sabine more and more, and not being able to actually look at Sabine while she talks just made me constantly cringe listening to the voice actress, because she just sounds like somebody who would voice a character in like a Tinkerbell straight-to-DVD release movie from Disney. I'm sorry. It's Tia Scar. I'm sure she's a great actress and a great person, but good Lord. And so... they cut to the explanation monologue from Sabine, and turns out Kanan and Hera were doing some very non-Disney XD-esque things behind the scenes while the series was going on. And they had a little green-haired baby, totally humanoid. No sign of Twi'lek in this kid. Jason Syndulla. Dude is just a straight little like handy-manny baby. Green hair. Looks like he's ready to do a Go Diego Go crossover or some shit. Yeah, so that was kind of odd. And Hera looking more like a mother, which I thought that was cool. But then we cut to Sabine overlooking Lothal. It turns out the Empire just never went back to Lothal for whatever reason. And I was like, okay. And she has this short purple hair. She had to freaking screw up her hairstyle one last time, because we couldn't end the series with her having the best hairstyle in the series. Because I think the hairstyle that she's had in these last few episodes, this last season, has been her best hairstyle yet. But no. We had to do a cut to her doing the Ezra pose from the first episode of the series, and she's got a pink blob or a purple blob for hair now. It's like, of course. Then we get to, then she mentions that Rex went on to survive and fought in the Battle of Endor with Hera. And I'm like, okay, so now the white bearded guy on Endor is confirmed to be Rex practically. That's cool. So that retcon is now a hard lock into canon. But Hera and the Ghost? I don't know about you, man. I was watching Return of the Jedi. Never heard Hera's name. Never saw the Ghost. I mean, I ran around there, as Inferno Squad in Battlefront 2. Never heard of Hera. Never saw her. Never saw her name anywhere. Nothing. And of course, you could, It makes sense that you wouldn't. You know, you could work that into a story pretty easily, but it's like we're getting a little too close, and we're touching the original trilogy. You know, a little. We're getting a little too intrusive here. I felt, and because that's the thing with the Clone Wars. You know, you're watching Revenge of the Sith, and you're watching all the events unfold, and you know that we're watching the end of what was just a war. They talk about it all throughout the movie. They're at the end of the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars has now happened since Attack of the Clones, and a freaking war had just happened. So the potential and the limitless possibility for the Clone Wars as a series was very real. And so they took, you know, of course, and that we saw that story mostly told. But I don't know about you guys, watching the original trilogy, I always felt as though what was happening to Vader and Palpatine and Luke and Obi-Wan and all these characters now active again in what was the 5 years of the Galactic Civil War, I felt as though, while yes, all these characters were alive and active in the last 20 years, I always felt that this and the original trilogy was the most eventful series of events to happen to them since Revenge of the Sith. And to have, you know, the Inquisitors and Vader having fought Ahsoka and Obi-Wan facing Maul, which I think is fine. It makes more, which I think that works itself into the story and it's pretty self-contained. But to have, you know, Palpatine nearly master time travel and nearly take over the universe by entering that realm with Ezra, and having these two Jedi active right before the original trilogy, and now having Ezra alive throughout the original trilogy, but having Yoda still say that Luke was the last Jedi. You know, all these different things that happened that went unsaid now throughout the original trilogy is just very odd. Because even with Episode 3, it's a stretch how Ahsoka and Rex never even have their names mentioned. Maul, alive and active, he's never mentioned. So, I mean, it was already pretty bad with Revenge of the Sith, but now I feel like it's almost worse with the original trilogy because you had all these major events that occurred with these Force users right before the original trilogy, and it all just goes completely without consequence throughout the narrative of the original trilogy, and everybody treats Luke and the crew of the Millennium Falcon like they're some kind of enigma, when in all reality it was nothing that Vader and Palpatine hadn't already confronted with the Empire and the forces on Lothal just a year prior. So I think that it's a more the case of they tried to make it weave into the films, but it was a rocky, bumpy transition. Like they got there, but the car nearly flipped over, and so I think it's kind of weird, man. But then of course we get to the very end, and Ahsoka is alive after Return of the Jedi, and she has gone full Gandalf. So now we know that Ahsoka has survived beyond the original trilogy. And now she's alive in the sequel era after Return of the Jedi, during the 30 years of peace before the First Order fully comes into form. So good God, that's exciting. Never thought Ahsoka would make it that far. But then when Sabine is like, I know Ezra's out there, and then she gets on board Ahsoka's shuttle and they take off, you're supposed to be excited for the next animated series because it means more Ezra and more Sabine. And my God, I'm so excited to have Ahsoka alive in such a time period rich with potential, but not with the strings of Ezra and Sabine still attached. If the next animated series is to be an Ahsoka Sabine quest for Ezra show, I don't know that I'll watch it. You might as well count me out as one of the biggest fans of Ahsoka. I might not be interested. That sounds awful to me, because I thought Ezra and Sabine all this time. I'm not going to repeat myself. You've been here long enough. But yeah, man, I'm excited that Ahsoka is alive, but I'm not excited that Ezra and Sabine are as well. I was truly hoping that we would have seen the last of them after this series finale, and it seems like that is simply not the case. And whether it be a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever, they will return, and the future still holds Ezra and Sabine, which is a shame because now they've matured into better characters. But unless their character models are redesigned, unless the voice actors are recast, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. So, yeah, I think that pretty much concludes all my thoughts for Star Wars Rebels. It's been a pretty weird 5 years. I'm really glad this shit is over, and now we can hopefully be back on track to be excited for what Disney and Lucasfilm have in store for all of us. So, I know I'm working on Infinity War. Time is of the essence, but I figure after 5 years of this, it was worth me sitting down and just finally talking about Rebels with you guys. And so that's why I posted this on MGF Extra. I know most people would not be interested in something like this, and so I really appreciate you guys sticking around for the whole thing. I hope you were doing something else while listening to me rant about Rebels for probably half an hour, 45 minutes now, but I'm really glad I did this video. And yeah, here's to hoping that Disney takes a hard look at themselves and allows the Lucasfilm animation division to really plan out the next series and really be crystal clear that what they'll be doing next will work. Because I can't imagine that Rebels was really concluded. It felt more like a cancellation because they rushed these final episodes, releasing 2 episodes a shot. I think is made it pretty clear that they were trying to finish the series and get it over with. So again, I'm optimistic for the future of Star Wars, but to say I'm cautiously optimistic is quite the understatement. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. Thank you for sticking around for all this, and I'll catch you guys later. All right. Bye-bye.